I invite Professor Wim Goettsch, it's a Dutch name, sorry if I mispronounce it, who is not only coordinating the Sustain HTA project, but who is also a professor at the University of Utrecht, HTA of Pharmaceuticals. So, Wim.
Yes, thank you, Francois, and I would like to also thank the European Access Academy for inviting me. When I was listening in these 2 hours, I thought, whoa, my presentation is a little bit a strange beast in what we did, and I don't have any KPIs in my presentation, so I'm sorry. But luckily at the end, I think in the discussion, there was a discussion about methods. And what do we want in terms of methods development in Europe. And I think that's the reason I'm here, because this project, Sustain HTA, has been funded by the Commission to see, well, what can we actually do to ensure that there is ongoing implementation of the latest fit-for-purpose HTA methodologies and tools in HTA practice. So, some initial considerations, as you're quite aware, and I think some of you have been involved, there have been many European projects, Horizon projects, IMI projects, now IHI projects, which have been focusing on methods development. Could be on pharmaceuticals, could be on medical devices. And there was the question, well, whether these kind of projects really have meant a difference in terms of how HTA bodies do their work. And also because we have to be aware that the way HTA bodies are working have been changing. When I came in HTA, which is a little bit a long time ago, we still did all kind of very big analysis. So we looked at cholesterol-lowering agents. We looked at antidepressants. Big groups, big trials. So we had to do randomized clinical trials. Well, now we are with mission-based work, small and targeted populations. So the question is a little bit, do the methods which we initially actually used for HTA still fit the purpose? And at the other hand, I think there has been some work over there, but we did not really see that these methods have been really implemented in HTA practice. So the question came from the Commission, can we really provide a kind of project or support action which would make a better link between aligned HTA body needs, methods development, and what's going on in universities? And I think that also there are some HTA bodies around the world which already have developed a mechanism in which you have a very close interaction between the academic groups and the HTA body. I think NICE in the UK is probably the most well-known example. But for instance, in the Netherlands, we have an academic research network, which our organization, the National Healthcare Institute, works together with University in Utrecht and with Erasmus University, and Maureen is also in the room. So this is a kind of example on how we try to link science to policy as quickly as possible. And can we actually do something similar on a European level? So this is the project, and I think this is the call. This is the way the Commission actually prepared the call, saying, well, can we actually identify new methods, but particularly those which were developed in European projects, and do they actually address the HTA body needs? And can we subsequently see why it does not happen yet? So what are the reasons that these methods are not being implemented? And subsequently, if we find methods which are fit for purpose, what can we do to actually ensure that they're going to be implemented? So can we have case studies? Can we have someone, for instance, what we call sandbox approaches to really test this? And one thing which was also very important, we also are aware that people probably don't have the experience to do that. So what can we do to educate people? And what can we do, for instance, if smaller HTA bodies also want to use more advanced methods? What are the kind of things we can help with? So for us, I think the starting point, and it was very clearly, what are the needs of the HTA bodies at EU and national level? I will just have to say, I won't go in detail, but just say a few words on what we're currently doing and pick out a few things which we already have results. So one thing which we have been developed is what we call a horizon scanning tool for the needs of HTA bodies. So what we do actually is every year, but even more commonly, we ask HTA bodies, where do you feel your methods are actually not fit for purpose? And where should we invest in terms of new methods? On the other hand, we developed also a tool we called an observatory for methods. So we look at the new European projects, but also the ones which are established, and see what are they developing. And then subsequently we try to align these needs to these developments in methods. But also we're working on something we call the sustained dialogue, which is actually meant to actually facilitate this kind of more systematic interaction between academia and HTA bodies, and working on a sandbox. And probably some of you are aware of something called regulatory sandboxes, which already have been used to test things. And currently we're also seeing, can we also do that for HTA? And how does that work? And then the education work. We're working on a competency framework, and there we also very closely look to what's going on in terms of the EU HTA regulation. And we're currently starting a fellowship program. So what we try to do is actually that mid-level HTA experts from HTA bodies which are less experienced can go to academic organizations to actually learn some methods, or maybe to more well-experienced HTA bodies in order to facilitate this uptake of more advanced methods. And we'll say a few words about the observatory and the horizon scanning. So just a few words, who are in this project, and I think therefore we also unique for Europe, because most horizon projects are mostly academia, and sometimes they include an HTA body, but sometimes I feel more it's for the scene that they have, oh, we have an HTA body on board and they work with us. But here it's more than the half of them are HTA bodies. And I think that's very crucial, because the needs development, again, is central in this project. But we also have academia, and these are mostly academia which have been involved or coordinating big European projects on HTA methods. And of course, we are not living in a silo. So we also feel that next to also involving other HTA bodies, we have an HTA network. So next to the 7 which are in a consortium, we have 8 others which are part of the HTA network. So we currently have 15 HTA bodies working with us. But we also have a stakeholder forum where we involve industry and payers and other stakeholders. I don't know if there's anybody. We had a big meeting in Budapest this year, where some of you might be there, where we also discussed with industry, what do you think is the value of this, that we're doing this, and what are your thoughts about this? And then also the other organizations, because I think organizations, learned societies, like ISPOR and HCI also do a lot of methods development. How will we take that into account? So we have an expert forum where we come together and also learn from other organizations, other initiatives. Where are you going? What are your new methods? So a little bit about the horizon scanning tool, and this is already available in the internet. If you go to the Sustain website, you will see that there is already a website, like what we call a beta tool, which shows these needs of HTA bodies. And I'm going very quickly. So, for instance, on real-world evidence, I think a lot of organizations, HTA bodies, struggle with how are we going to handle real-world evidence. I think the question about single-arm trials and external controls. So there's also, so what can we actually do? What's already going on? So there's a need. So the next question will be, are there already tools being developed? And therefore we have the observatory. And also there, if you're interested, you can go to the Sustain HTA website, and there is a beta tool available now. And firstly, what we did was identifying which projects are there. And I can show you, there are many projects. I think around now we have 20, 25 European projects which do some work on HTA methods development. And one of the struggles we also have, that there seems to be not that much interaction between those projects. For instance, there are 7 or 8 projects which work on real-world evidence. And they all do their same systematic reviews. They all send out their same surveys to HTA bodies, which are, oh, another survey on real-world evidence. So I think it's important also for us to show that a lot of work is going on, but we have to find out how can we actually bring those activities closer together. And what are the kind of methods you find if you go there? For instance, on comparison, cross-NMA. Has anybody ever heard from cross-NMA? Anybody in the room? So this is a tool which has been developed by one of those projects to make what's we'll call randomized network meta-analysis between RCTs and real-world data studies. So this is a quite interesting tool. It's one of the first tools which has been developed. But the question is, do we know? And do HTA bodies really know? And do we think it's good enough to actually use that in HTA practice? And so there are much more, for instance, about core outcome sets for diabetes or for IBD So there's already a lot of method information available, and it looks like not that much people are actually using it. So what are we going to do ensure that this kind of information is being used? And also the next time, if the Commission is going to set out an HTA call, that they're not going to say, well, we want something about real-world evidence. Firstly, see what's already there and see what will we really need in terms of method developments for real-world evidence. Of course, we are here, so we feel, well, what can we do to also link this work to the EU HCR coordination group? And there is a subgroup methodology, it was already referred to. And we know that the current guidelines are more a summary of all the common practice, which was, of course, reasonable, because if the first thing you're going to do, you're not going to find any alignment on these methods. This is something which we need to grow, needs to learn from the joint clinical assessments, but we might also be able to help, well, if we do indirect comparisons, what would be the preferred methods? And are we actually going to adapt our guidelines to suggest certain preferred methods? We work together with a project called Hack Insight, which is a project about learning, about how to do GCAs, how to do GSCs, what is the real process. So many in Europe at the HCA bodies are currently following. And can we actually also work together with them, for instance, about new innovative HCA methods? And finally, technical support instruments. These are very interesting projects. These are also funded by the European Commission, and they're meant to help countries which are less experienced in HCA. And actually, what I've seen, I'm also involved in one of those, that those countries were really motivated by the EU HCA regulation to really start up their HCA processes. So, but also for those where there is not that much expertise available, we could help actually in fellowship, for instance, to send people from one of those countries, maybe to countries where they have more experience. That could be academic institutions, but it could be also HCA bodies. So we feel that our project can help to actually boost competitiveness and innovation to the project, because we are able to actually give an overview on what the needs are of the HCA bodies. Subsequently, we can link that to, for instance, what's already there. And we see a lot of interest in real-world evidence and artificial intelligence, but for instance also environmental sustainability. There are a number of countries where the environment and how environment is actually a topic now. How can we actually also address that in health technology assessment? But also we need to have a feeling that the methods which we are going to implement are fair and are of good quality. So we also feel that our project might help to actually develop a kind of filter where we can filter out the ones which are the best and the best suited for HCA bodies. And finally, we hope that we can create a platform, and we also hope that our project can continue. And I think that's an issue of all European projects. How are you going to continue after the project funding stops? To actually have something which can actually provide this platform also after 2027. And it might be something the European Commission is interested in to fund. Or we could link ourselves to learned societies like ISPOR and HCI. So if you have any questions, I'm open for that. I will be here for today. And I hope to also hear if you have any thoughts on where we should really put our efforts in terms of HCA methods. I think we would be open to discuss that with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wim. You were excellent, also with the time, so we have time for some questions. No questions? Jörg, and then another one.
We have time for questions. I have a question. Thanks, Wim, for the presentation, and thanks for your work. So I think developing the methods in an environment of, let's say, evolution of the treatment paradigm and basic research paradigm towards ever targeted and so on is important and is key. Now, one question I always have, and we discussed it at the Rome Convention, and we have the nice editorial from Maureen and Martin Eiserman and so on and so on. We have the two types of error. The one is that we falsely assign an additional benefit, and the other is that we falsely don't assign an additional benefit. We usually focus on the first one. So is part of your research also looking into the risk that we falsely, how should I say, cut the grass too early?
Well, not yet, I must admit. So it's something to consider. I think I think that's something to see what are the ways which we use statistics now to make choices are fit for purpose. And that's certainly something we need to work out in more detail.
Thanks.
So one last question at the back of the... sorry, Monder, I don't see you when you raise your hand.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for the very interesting presentation, which is just combining and presenting, in fact, a bunch of projects which are currently ongoing with respect to HTA. Well, you are asking about certain suggestions for the future, and my question is, how about companion diagnostics and in vitro medical devices, so diagnostic tests, and therapies used in hematology, oncology for small patients populations?
Yeah, there are a lot of suggestions. But we asked the HA bodies for their needs, and I think that, for instance, indeed diagnostics came up. That's something, a struggle, just like digital technologies. And indeed also this type of assessing technologies where you only have a few patients and where you have probably different designs in terms of research. I think these are topics which are on the mind of most of the HA bodies. So that is certainly something which we're addressing. Something like what is the use of a target trial emulation in HA practice, for instance? If you talk about real-world evidence, about using internal controls, about single-arm trials, that is really a big topic. And we noticed that a lot of the HA bodies said, well, can we really trust real-world data and then subsequently being used in target trial emulations? So that might be something which you also are willing to take up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And before we... Monder, is it a short question or a complex one? Because I see your hand coming up.
That was, how do you balance the fact that decision maker wanted to have very robust and well-established methodology, and that all the emergent methodology, they peak and disappear for the vast majority of them?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. I think that's also one of the worries, because if I showed you already this example of a few of those methods, what is actually, when is a method success? And when do you feel that method will stay actually? And when is it just, well, coming up and coming down again? I think that's something we have to look at. And I think that, for instance, we have been talking about real-world evidence for quite a while, and we've seen many methods. And we're not sure yet which ones are going to stay. Yeah, so I think it's an excellent question. I don't have an immediate answer to it.
And